Part 1: The Disappearance and the Silence. The Great Hall of Velamora Prime floated in space like a crystal dream. Inside, representatives from 47 alien species sat in their designated chambers. They had gathered for the most important meeting in 1,000 years. The topic was simple but haunting. Earth Ambassador Hyunwoo stood before the assembly. He was not human. He was Velcron, a species with gray skin and 3 fingers on each hand. But he had spent his entire career studying the lost human civilization. Today, he would present his findings about the greatest mystery in galactic history. 1,000 years ago, Hyunwoo began, his voice echoing through the chamber. Earth and its entire solar system vanished. No explosion. No debris, just gone. The last transmission came from Commander Daeho of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. His final words were about his daughter Nari. Then silence. Complete silence. The assembled aliens shifted in their seats. Some had heard this story before. Others were too young to remember. But all knew the legend of the vanishing planet. A Thornax representative made entirely of living crystal spoke up. Why do we discuss this ancient history? Humans are extinct. We built a memorial. We moved on. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Yes, we moved on. But did we move forward? In the 1,000 years since Earth disappeared, has any species in this galaxy made a major breakthrough? Has anyone dared to push the boundaries of science the way humans did? The hall fell silent. It was true. After witnessing an entire solar system vanish, every civilization had become cautious. Innovation had slowed to a crawl. The galaxy had achieved peace, but it was the peace of stagnation. Across the galaxy, on a research station orbiting a dying star, scientist Jiwon was having a very bad day. Her equipment was malfunctioning. At least she thought it was malfunctioning. The readings she was getting made no sense. Jiwon was Velcron like Ambassador Hyunwoo. But she cared nothing for politics. She cared about numbers, data, and the truth they revealed. Right now, the truth was telling her something impossible. Run the diagnostic again, she told her assistant, a young Morvian named Click 7. The insectoid creature complied, its many arms working the controls with practiced efficiency. The results came back identical. Jiwon felt her 3 hearts begin to race. This can't be right, she whispered. These readings, they're identical to the ones from 1,000 years ago. The Earth vanishing readings. Click 7's antennae twitched nervously. But in reverse? Yes, exactly in reverse. Something is coming back. Within hours, every deep space sensor array in the galaxy confirmed Jiwon's discovery. A massive spatial displacement was occurring in Sector 001, the empty void where Earth's sun had once burned. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. This time, when Ambassador Hyunwoo spoke, his voice shook with emotion. Citizens of the galaxy, I present to you the impossible. Earth is returning. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Aliens from dozens of species shouted questions, accusations, and theories. The Thornax representative demanded military action. The Morvian collective wanted to send science vessels. The Velcron wanted to wait and observe. High Chancellor Soo-hyun, an ancient being who had lived through the original vanishing, raised her hand for silence. She was Velcran, the oldest of her kind, her skin wrinkled with age. We will send a fleet, she announced. But it will be a diplomatic fleet, not a war fleet. If there are survivors, they have endured something we cannot imagine. We will greet them with respect. 3 weeks later, a fleet of 200 ships approached the Sol system. Admiral Sungmin commanded the lead vessel. He was young for such responsibility, but he had trained his entire life for first contact situations. Nothing in his training had prepared him for what he saw. The solar system had returned, but it had changed. Earth's sun burned with a strange golden light. Mars glowed red and blue instead of just red. Strange structures orbited every planet. The asteroid belt had been reorganized into perfect geometric patterns. Sir, his sensor officer reported, I'm detecting technology everywhere. Active technology. Someone is home. Before Sungmin could respond, his communication system came to life. A human face appeared on the screen. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and a calm smile. She spoke in perfect galactic standard. Welcome to the Sol system, she said. I am Admiral Borum of the Terran Unity Fleet. We've been expecting you. Sungmin's mouth fell open. You speak our language? We had time to learn, Borum replied. A lot of time. Permission to approach your flagship? I think we have much to discuss. An hour later, Sungmin stood in his conference room facing Admiral Borum. She had arrived alone, in a small shuttle that his sensors had barely detected until it was alongside his ship. Now she sat calmly, drinking tea that his crew had prepared. "You want to know what happened?" Borum said. It wasn't a question. Sungmin nodded. "The galaxy has wondered for 1,000 years. Borum set down her tea. "We didn't die, we ran. Something was coming. Something that would have destroyed us. Our scientists, led by a man named Taewan, built a device called the displacement engine. It moved our entire solar system into a pocket dimension." Pocket dimension? Sungmin struggled to understand. His people had theories about such things, but no practical application. A small bubble of space-time separated from normal space. Time flows differently there. What you experienced as 1,000 years, we experienced as 50. Sungmin did the math in his head. 50 years? But your technology, your structures, 50 years of focused effort. Borum smiled. 50 years where every human worked together with one goal, survival. We had no wars, no conflicts, just the drive to live and return home. Return? You always planned to come back? Of course. This is our home. We just needed time to prepare. Sungmin looked at the human woman with new eyes. She spoke of accomplishing in 50 years what the entire galaxy had failed to do in 1,000. She spoke of unity that his people had never achieved. She spoke of preparation, which implied they knew something he didn't. "Prepare for what?" he asked quietly. Borum's smile faded. "The thing that made us run. It's still out there. And soon it will come for all of us. That's why we came back, Admiral Sungmin. Not to conquer, not to rule, but to help you survive what's coming." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sungmin felt cold despite the warm tea in his hands. Outside the window, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and mysterious. Humans had vanished for 1,000 years and returned as something new. The galaxy was about to change forever, and Sungmin had a feeling that humanity's return was just the beginning. Part 2. Humanity Evolved Ambassador Hyunwoo had requested permission to visit Earth's surface. After 3 days of diplomatic discussion, the humans finally agreed. Now he stood in a shuttle descending through Earth's atmosphere, and what he saw below made his hands tremble. The Earth he had studied in ancient records was gone. In its place was something magnificent. Cities of white and silver stretched across the continents, blending seamlessly with forests and oceans. Flying vehicles moved in organized streams through the air. Great towers reached into the sky, their tops disappearing into the clouds. But it was the land between the cities that shocked him most. Instead of the industrial wastelands he expected from advanced civilizations, he saw green parks, wild forests, and crystal-clear rivers. Somehow humans had built paradise. The shuttle landed in what the pilot called New Seoul, though Hyunwoo saw no resemblance to the ancient city from his historical files. A woman waited for him at the landing pad. She was tall, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Ambassador Hyunwoo," she said with a slight bow. "I am Director Minji of the Temporal Research Institute. I'll be your guide today." As they walked through the city, Hyunwoo couldn't stop staring. Humans moved with a grace he hadn't expected. Many had faint blue lights glowing at their temples. Children played in parks while robotic guardians watched over them. Everything was clean, efficient, and beautiful. "You have questions," Minji said. "Everyone does. Let me show you something first." She led him to a building that seemed to be made of living crystal. Inside, a massive holographic display showed the history of humanity's 50-year exile. Hyunwoo watched in amazement as the story unfolded. When Earth had detected the approaching threat 1,000 years ago, panic had spread across the planet. Wars nearly broke out over who would get to use the few evacuation ships humanity possessed. But then a scientist named Taewan had presented his plan to the world leaders. "We don't run away," Taewan had said in the recording. "We take Earth with us." The displacement engine had been humanity's greatest gamble. It required every nuclear reactor on Earth, every power station, every source of energy to activate. If it failed, humanity would die in an instant. If it succeeded, they would be trapped in a pocket dimension with no guarantee of ever returning. They activated it with 27 hours to spare before the threat arrived. "What was it?" Hyunwoo asked. "This thing you ran from?" Minji's expression darkened. "We call it Entity Omega, a creature from outside normal space that feeds on civilizations. We'll discuss it later. First, you need to understand what we became." She led him deeper into the institute. They passed laboratories where scientists worked on projects Hyunwoo couldn't begin to understand. In one room, he saw a human woman holding her hand over a machine. Objects materialized from thin air at her mental command. Matter resequencing, Minji explained. We can build anything from base atoms now. Food, tools, even complex machinery. Hunger is a concept from our past. In another chamber, Hyunwoo watched as a man stepped into a circular platform and vanished. Seconds later, he reappeared in a different platform across the room. Quantum gates, Minji said. Instantaneous travel. We have them connecting every city on Earth and throughout the solar system. A human can have breakfast in Tokyo and lunch on Mars. But it was the neural interface demonstration that truly frightened Hyunwoo. Minji introduced him to a group of engineers working on a complex problem. As he watched, their temple lights pulsed in synchronization. They weren't talking, but somehow they were communicating, sharing thoughts directly from mind to mind. We're still individuals, Minji assured him, seeing his disturbed expression. The neural network doesn't make us a hive mind like the Morvians. It just lets us share knowledge and communicate instantly. A human child can access the collective knowledge of our entire species if they want to learn something. How long do you live? Hyunwoo asked suddenly. Minji smiled. The oldest among us are over 300 years old now. We cured aging 20 years into our exile. Cancer, genetic diseases, even nerve damage, all solved. A human can expect to live for at least 5 centuries before old age becomes a concern. The tour continued for hours. Hyunwoo saw hospitals where the sick were healed in days, schools where children learned at 10 times the speed of his own species, energy plants that pulled power from the fabric of space itself. And everywhere, he saw humans working together with a unity that his fractured galaxy had never achieved. Finally, Minji brought him to a military base on the outskirts of the city. A young man in a dark blue uniform waited for them. He had the bearing of a warrior but the calm eyes of a scholar. Ambassador, this is Captain Junho of the Terran Defense Force, Minji said. He's going to show you why no one in the galaxy should ever think of attacking Earth. Junho led them to a simulation chamber. We don't want to frighten you, he said politely, but the Galactic Council needs to understand our capabilities. We've been monitoring your fleet since you entered our system. Your 200 ships are impressive by galactic standards. He activated the holographic display. It showed the Council fleet surrounding Earth in attack formation. This is a simulation based on your actual ships and their known capabilities, Junho explained. Now watch what happens when a single Terran destroyer engages. A blue icon appeared on the display representing one human ship. What happened next lasted less than 5 seconds. The human vessel moved in ways that seemed to violate physics, phasing in and out of normal space. Weapons fire from the Council fleet passed harmlessly through it. Then the destroyer released a pulse of energy that simultaneously disabled every Council ship. 4.7 seconds, Junho said quietly. That's how long it would take one of our destroyers to neutralize your entire fleet. We wouldn't destroy you. We don't want to harm anyone. But we can disable any threat before it becomes dangerous. Hyunwoo felt sick. His people had sent that fleet believing they were the dominant power. They had assumed humans, if they still existed, would be primitive survivors grateful for rescue. Instead, they had stumbled upon a civilization so far beyond them that the gap couldn't be measured. Why are you showing me this? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Minji placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Because we need you to understand. We're not your enemies, Ambassador Hyunwoo. We're not here to conquer or rule, but we are powerful. More powerful than anyone in the galaxy. Some of your people will fear us. Some will want to destroy us before we become a threat. We're showing you the truth so you can help them understand. Understand what? That we came back to help. The thing that made us run Entity Omega, it's waking up. We've been tracking it from the pocket dimension. In 5 years, maybe less, it will emerge into normal space. When it does, it will begin feeding on every civilization it finds. The Velkran, the Morvians.
The Thornax, everyone. Hyunwoo stared at her.
You're saying we're all going to die? Not if we work together, Minji said firmly. We spent 50 years preparing to fight Entity Omega. We have weapons, strategies, and technology specifically designed to stop it. But we can't do it alone. We need the galaxy to unite. We need every species to contribute their unique abilities to the fight. And if they refuse? Minji's expression hardened. Then Entity Omega will consume them, and we'll have to watch another civilization die. We ran once, Ambassador. We survived while others might have perished. We won't run again, but we need help. We need the galaxy to trust us. As Hyunwoo's shuttle lifted off from Earth later that day, he looked down at the blue planet below. Humanity had vanished for 1,000 years and returned as gods. They could destroy the galaxy or save it. The choice belonged to everyone else now. He activated his communication system and began composing his report to the Galactic Council. Every word would matter. The future of every living being in the galaxy depended on what happened next. Part 3. The Galactic Fracture. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours straight. Ambassador Hyunwoo's report had caused exactly the chaos he had feared. The Great Hall of Velmora Prime echoed with angry voices from dozens of species, each more frightened than the last. High Chancellor Soo-Yun called for order, her aged voice cutting through the noise. Silence. We must discuss this rationally. A Thornax representative, Lord Crix, rose from his crystalline seat. His body glowed with angry red light. Rationally, these humans appear from nowhere with technology that makes us look like children playing with rocks. They claim to be our saviors, but I say they are our greatest threat. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species had built their power on military might. The idea that one civilization could disable their entire fleet in seconds was terrifying. They could have destroyed our fleet, Hyunwoo argued. But they didn't. They welcomed us. They showed us their capabilities not as a threat but as transparency. Or as a warning, Lord Crix shot back. They show us their power to make us afraid. To make us bow. I say we should strike first before they become unstoppable. The Morvian Collective's representative, speaking through their Queen Mind's avatar, clicked their mandibles thoughtfully. Our calculations show that humanity's advancement rate exceeds our own by a factor of 47. At current progression, they will surpass all galactic civilizations combined within 80 years. The logical conclusion is containment. Chancellor Soo-Yun looked tired. She had lived through the original Earth vanishing. Now she was watching the galaxy tear itself apart over Earth's return. What do you propose? A quarantine, the Morvian avatar stated. Restrict human expansion to their solar system. Monitor their activities. Prevent them from spreading across the galaxy. That's imprisonment, a small voice said from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look. It was Jiwon, the scientist who had first detected Earth's return. She was not a politician and had no official right to speak, but Chancellor Soo-Hyun gestured for her to continue. I've studied the data Ambassador Hyunwoo brought back, Jiwon said, her voice shaking with nervousness but growing stronger. The humans are telling the truth about Entity Omega. I found references to it in ancient records from 12 different extinct civilizations. They all describe the same thing. A darkness that comes from beyond space feeding on life and technology. Every 50,000 years, advanced civilizations across the galaxy vanish. We thought it was natural decline. It wasn't. It was Entity Omega. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Lord Crix's glow dimmed to orange. If this is true, why did humans run? Why didn't they warn us? Because 1,000 years ago we didn't have galactic communication networks, Hyunwoo reminded them. Humans detected the threat too late to warn anyone. They saved themselves. Now they're trying to save us. Chancellor Soo-Yun made her decision. I propose we offer humanity a seat on the Galactic Council. We extend friendship and cooperation. The vote was close. 24 species voted yes. 23 voted no. The galaxy was divided exactly in half. 3 days later, President Hajun of Earth addressed the Galactic Council via holographic transmission. He appeared young, perhaps 90 years old by human standards, but his eyes held ancient wisdom. Behind him, Earth rotated slowly, blue and beautiful. People of the galaxy, he began. We understand your fear. We would be frightened too if the situation were reversed. We vanished for what you call 1,000 years. We returned with technology you don't understand, and now we tell you that a great threat is coming. He paused, letting his words sink in. We could have stayed hidden. We were safe in our pocket dimension. We could have let Entity Omega consume the galaxy and remained in our sanctuary forever. But that's not who we are. Humans don't abandon others to die. President Hajun's expression became serious. We offer you a choice. Work with us and we'll share everything we've learned. Our medical technology that can cure your diseases. Our energy systems that can power your worlds forever. Our knowledge that took 50 years of unified effort to build. We ask only for one thing in return. Accept us as equals. A Velcran counselor spoke up. And if we refuse? President Hajun's face showed sadness, not anger. Then we'll defend our system and watch from a distance as Entity Omega arrives. We'll try to save whoever comes to us seeking refuge, but we won't force our help on anyone. We learned long ago that fear makes people do terrible things. We left once to avoid conflict. We hope we don't have to leave again. The transmission ended. The Galactic Council erupted into fresh arguments. Lord Crix had made his decision. The Thornax Empire would not bow to human superiority. In secret, he began mobilizing the largest war fleet in galactic history. 10,000 ships from the Thornax Empire and their subject species. If humans wanted a place in the galaxy, they would have to earn it through blood. The attack came 3 weeks later. The Thornax fleet emerged from jump space near Mars, weapons hot and targeting solutions locked. Lord Crix commanded from his flagship, confident in his numerical superiority. "This is your only warning," he broadcasted to Mars. "Surrender your technology and submit to Galactic Council authority, or be destroyed." The response came from a human named Seojin, a defense coordinator on Mars. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "This is Seojin of Mars Defense. You are attacking a peaceful system. Stand down immediately." Lord Crix laughed. "You face 10,000 ships with what? I see only 50 human vessels. Surrender now." "Last chance," Seojin warned. "I really don't want to embarrass you in front of the entire galaxy." Lord Crix gave the order to fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 17 minutes. The 50 Terran ships moved like ghosts. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind Thornax vessels and disappearing before return fire could reach them. Their weapons didn't explode ships. Instead, they released pulses that systematically disabled propulsion, weapons, and communication systems. A Thornax battlecruiser would be firing one moment and drifting dead in space the next. Its crew unharmed but completely helpless. The human ships worked with impossible coordination, as if they shared one mind. In reality, their neural networks let them process information and coordinate at speeds no other species could match. Lord Crix watched in horror as his fleet was dismantled piece by piece. His own flagship was hit by some kind of energy beam. Every system went dark. He sat in the emergency lighting, surrounded by confused crew members, realizing he had just made the worst mistake of his life. When the fighting stopped, all 10,000 Thornax ships were disabled and drifting. Not a single vessel had been destroyed. Not one crew member had been killed. The humans had defeated the largest war fleet in galactic history without taking a single life. Seojin's voice came over the emergency channels. "Thornax fleet, you are disabled but safe. Rescue ships from the Galactic Council are on their way. Your life support systems remain online. You have food and water for 3 weeks. We suggest you use that time to think about your choices." Then the human ships simply vanished, leaving the Thornax armada floating in space like monuments to failed ambition. The message had been received across the galaxy. Humanity could destroy anyone, but they chose mercy. They could rule through fear, but they chose friendship, and anyone who attacked them would be humiliated but not killed. Within 6 hours, Lord Crix sent a formal message of surrender and apology. The Thornax Empire sued for peace and requested humanitarian aid to rescue their stranded fleet. The humans sent supply ships immediately. Back on Velmora Prime, Chancellor Suhyun called an emergency vote. The question was simple. Should humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council? This time the vote was 41-6 in favor. Fear had given way to respect. Respect was beginning to grow into hope. But as G1 studied her sensor data late that night, she noticed something disturbing. At the edge of galactic space, in the dark void between stars, space-time was beginning to ripple. The pattern matched the ancient records she'd found. Entity Omega was stirring. The galaxy had 5 years to prepare, maybe less. She sent her findings to Earth and to the Galactic Council simultaneously. The time for politics and fear was over. Now came the time for survival. Part 4. The ancient threat Dr. Yunji stood before the largest gathering of alien scientists in galactic history. Behind her, a holographic display showed data that made several species representatives physically recoil in fear. She was young for such an important presentation, barely 120 years old, but she had spent her entire life studying Entity Omega. 15 civilizations, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. That's how many advanced species we've found evidence of in the ancient records. All of them reached a point of technological and cultural achievement similar to ours. All of them vanished completely within a single generation. A Velcran scientist raised his hand. Natural disaster, war, resource depletion? Unji shook her head. No signs of any of those. They just stopped. Cities abandoned overnight. Ships left drifting in space. Communication networks went silent. For 50,000 years, we've assumed these were separate events. We were wrong. They were all the same event, happening in cycles. She changed the display to show a timeline stretching back millions of years. Red marks appeared at regular intervals. Every 50,000 years, Entity Omega enters our dimension. It feeds on civilizations that have reached a certain level of development. It consumes their technology, their culture, their life force itself. Then it returns to wherever it comes from and sleeps until the next cycle. How do you know this? Asked a Morvian scientist, his antennae twitching with agitation. Because we saw it, Yunji replied quietly. 1,000 years ago, our long-range sensors detected something approaching from outside normal space. Our scientist Taewon didn't know what it was at first, but he recognized the danger. We had months, not years. So we ran. She pulled up new images. They showed something that hurt to look at directly. A darkness that seemed to absorb light and meaning itself. This is Entity Omega. Not a ship. Not a weapon. A living thing that exists partially outside our dimension. It's enormous, spanning light years when fully extended. It feeds by draining the energy from stars and the consciousness from sentient beings. The room fell silent. Several aliens were visibly shaking. How do we fight something like that? Chancellor Suhyun asked from her seat. Yunji smiled grimly. That's why we spent 50 years preparing. Let me introduce Captain Wu Jin. A human man in a military uniform stepped forward. He had scars on his face from some past accident, giving him a rough appearance, but his eyes were kind. We've been developing weapons and strategies specifically designed to combat Entity Omega, but we need help from every species here. He activated a new display showing schematics that made the alien scientists lean forward with interest. Entity Omega exists in multiple dimensions at once. Our weapons need to target all of those dimensions simultaneously. We've developed what we call resonance weapons that can do this, but they require massive amounts of coordinated power. How massive? Asked a Thornax engineer, the same species that had attacked Mars weeks earlier. Every power generation facility in the galaxy running at maximum capacity, Wu Jin replied. And that's just for one shot. We'll need dozens of shots, maybe hundreds. Entity Omega can regenerate damage unless we hit it all at once. A wave of dismay spread through the audience. It seemed impossible. That's where each of you comes in, Yunji continued. The Velcran have genetic databases spanning millions of species. We need that knowledge to create adaptive shields. The Morvians have hive mind coordination that can link our fleets better than any computer. The Thornax can grow crystalline structures that resonate at specific frequencies, perfect for our sensor networks. She looked around the room at the dozens of different species. Every civilization here has something unique, something that evolved over millions of years in your specific environments. Humans are good at innovation and coordination, but we can't do this alone. We need the galaxy's diversity. Over the following months, the greatest collaboration in galactic history began. Scientist Gayung led the integration effort, bringing together technologies and knowledge from every species into hybrid systems, more powerful than anything that had existed before. On Earth, Velcran genetic engineers worked alongside human biologists. On the Morvian homeworld, programmers from 6 different species learned to interface with the collective's hive mind. On the crystal moon of Thornax Prime, artists and engineers sculpted massive resonance arrays that sang with power. But it wasn't just technology that was being shared. Culture began to flow between worlds in ways that had never happened before. Lieutenant Minsyok of the Terran Unity Fleet found himself assigned to a mixed species unit on a shipyard orbiting Mars. His commanding officer was a Velcran warrior named Zell, the same one who had voted to attack Earth 3 months earlier. Their first meeting was tense. Zell stood stiffly, his gray skin darker with embarrassment. I voted for war against your people, he admitted. I was wrong. Minseok extended his hand for a handshake, a human gesture that Zell had learned about. You were scared. Fear makes people do things they regret. I've been there. Over the weeks that followed, they became friends. Minseok taught Zell about human culture, music, and food. Zell shared stories of Velkron history and showed Minseok meditation techniques that had kept his people calm for millennia. They discovered that despite their biological differences, they wanted the same things: safety for their families, purpose in their lives, and a future worth living. On Earth, a teacher named Heian started a program that would change the galaxy forever. She opened schools where human children learned alongside alien youngsters. At first, the differences seemed too great. Morvian children communicated through chemical signals. Thornax children learned through crystal resonance. Velkran children needed less oxygen, but children were children. They played together, learned together, and became friends without the prejudices of their parents. A Morvian child named Buzz-12 taught his human classmates how to read chemical patterns. A human girl named Ariam showed her Thornax friend how to laugh, something crystalline beings had never experienced before. Within a generation, Heian believed, the galaxy would have a population that saw each other as friends first and aliens second. On Mars, Admiral Junho oversaw the construction of the Unity fleet. It was an impossible task made possible by unprecedented cooperation. Shipyards from every major species worked together, building vessels that combined the best of all their technologies. Velkran armor plating covered human power cores. Morvian coordination systems linked with Thornax sensor arrays. Each ship in the fleet was a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when working together. But time was running short. Juwan's sensors showed Entity Omega's approach accelerating. What they thought would be 5 years was now looking like 3, maybe less. President Hajun called a meeting of all species leaders. They gathered not in the cold halls of Velmora Prime, but on Earth, in a newly built amphitheater that could accommodate every body type and environmental need. We've spent 3 months working together, Hajun began. We've achieved more in that time than the galaxy has in 1,000 years. But we need to go faster. Entity Omega won't wait for us to be ready. Chancellor Suhyun stood, her age-worn body supported by human medical technology that had given her new strength. What do you propose? Total integration, Hajun replied. Not just of technology, but of command structure. The Unity fleet needs unified leadership. When Entity Omega arrives, we can't have 47 different species arguing about tactics. We need one voice, one plan, one coordinated defense. It was the most controversial proposal yet. Species that had been independent for millions of years being asked to submit to unified command. Many representatives shifted uncomfortably. Lord Crix, humbled by his defeat but still proud, stood. Who would command this unified force? The humans? No, Hajun said firmly. Someone the entire galaxy trusts. Someone who has lived long enough to understand all of us. Someone wise enough to lead and humble enough to listen. All eyes turned to Chancellor Suhyun. She stared at Hajun in shock. Me? I'm old, tired. You're experienced, Hajun countered. You remember when Earth vanished. You've led the Council through the hardest decisions, and every species here respects you. You're the only one who can unite us. The vote was unanimous. Chancellor Suhyun became the Supreme Commander of the Unity Fleet, the first being in galactic history to command forces from every species under one banner. As the meeting ended and representatives returned to their worlds to prepare, Yunji checked her sensors one last time. The readings made her blood run cold. Entity Omega had accelerated again. They didn't have 3 years. They had 18 months. She sent the update to every world simultaneously. The message was simple. Work faster or die together. The galaxy chose to work faster. Part 5. The Reckoning. The sensors lit up across every world in the galaxy simultaneously. Entity Omega had arrived. Fleet Commander Sang-hoon stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity's Hope, watching the impossible appear on his displays. The thing that emerged at the galactic rim was beyond description. It wasn't a ship or a creature in any normal sense. It was a wound in reality itself, a darkness that absorbed light and meaning and hope. All ships report ready status, his tactical officer reported. Around him, the bridge crew represented 12 different species working in perfect coordination. Send to all vessels, Sang-hoon ordered. Today we fight not as Velkran or human or Morvian. Today we fight as one galaxy, for our families, for our future, for everyone who ever dared to dream of a better tomorrow. The Unity fleet consisted of 100,000 ships. Every major species had contributed their best vessels. Humans provided the technology, Velcran provided the armor, Morvians provided the coordination, Thornax provided the sensors. Dozens of smaller species provided specialized systems that made the fleet more than the sum of its parts. Supreme Commander Suhyun's face appeared on every screen in every ship. Her aged features showed determination that inspired millions of crew members. Entity Omega has fed on 15 civilizations that we know of. Today it learns that the 16th will not go quietly. All ships engage. The battle began. Entity Omega moved like oil spreading across water, extending tendrils of darkness toward inhabited systems. The Unity fleet met it at the edge of the Galactic rim, opening fire with every weapon they had. Human resonance weapons tore holes in Entity Omega's form. Velcran plasma cannons burned its extended limbs. Morvian coordination allowed the fleet to strike at weak points simultaneously. Thornax sensor arrays tracked every movement, predicting attacks before they happened. For 3 hours it seemed like they might win. Entity Omega recoiled from their assault, withdrawing its tendrils, shrinking back toward the dimensional breach it had emerged from. Then it adapted. The darkness began absorbing their weapons' fire, learning from each attack. Resonance weapons that had torn it apart now passed harmlessly through its form. Ships that ventured too close to its tendrils went dark. Their power drained, their crews left unconscious. "It's learning faster than we predicted," Gayung reported from the science vessel. "Every attack makes it stronger." Sang-hoon watched his tactical display fill with red icons as ships went offline. Thousands of vessels, tens of thousands of crew members. "Pull back to defensive formation beta. We need time to adapt," but Entity Omega pressed forward. A massive tendril swept through a Morvian battle group. 40 ships went silent in an instant. The entity began extending tendrils toward inhabited systems, reaching for worlds full of life to consume. On the bridge of Unity's Hope, Sang-hoon received a transmission that made his blood run cold. The Morvian Queen Mind had made a decision. She was ordering her remaining hive fleets to form a living wall between Entity Omega and the inhabited worlds. "We will buy you time," the Queen Mind said through her avatar. "Use it well." 3,000 Morvian ships formed a barrier. Entity Omega crashed into them like a wave against rocks. The Morvians didn't fire weapons. They simply held position, letting the darkness consume them while the rest of the fleet retreated to regroup. It was the most courageous and heartbreaking thing Sang-hoon had ever witnessed. In 20 minutes, 3,000 ships and over 2 million Morvian lives were gone, but they had bought the galaxy 30 precious hours to prepare a new strategy. Back on Earth, Engineer Yejin had been working without sleep for 3 days straight. She had an idea, a desperate gamble built on something uniquely human, the power of consciousness itself. "We've been trying to fight Entity Omega with physical weapons," she explained to President Hajun. "But it exists partially in a dimension of pure thought and energy. What if we fight it on that level?" She proposed the Resonance Network, a system that would link every sentient mind in the galaxy into a unified consciousness, not to make them think the same, but to amplify their willpower into a weapon. Every person who wanted to live, every being who refused to let the darkness win, their combined determination shaped into a force that could push Entity Omega back. "It's never been tested," Hajun said. "We're out of options," Yejin replied, "and out of time." The network went live 6 hours later. Across the galaxy, billions of beings felt a strange connection bloom in their minds. Humans, Velcran, Morvians, Thornax, and dozens of other species all linked together. They could feel each other's fear, courage, and desperate hope. When Entity Omega attacked again, the Resonance Network activated. The combined willpower of an entire galaxy pushed back against the darkness. Entity Omega screamed, a sound that resonated in the minds of every connected being. It hurt, but it worked. The entity's advance slowed, but it wasn't enough. Entity Omega was too strong, too old, too vast. It had fed on civilizations for millions of years. One galaxy's resistance, no matter how determined, couldn't stop it completely. Sang-hoon received a transmission on a private channel. It was from a Terran captain named Daeho, great-grandson of the commander who had sent the last message before Earth's original disappearance. "Commander, I have a plan," Daeho said, "but you're not going to like it." 30 minutes later, Sang-hoon stood before Supreme Commander Soo-hyun presenting Daeho's proposal. It was insane and brave and heartbreaking. During humanity's 50 years in the pocket dimension, they had built a second displacement engine. It was more powerful than the first, capable of pulling Entity Omega out of normal space permanently. But it required someone to pilot a ship into the entity's core and activate the engine from inside. There would be no return. Whoever went would be trapped in the pocket dimension with Entity Omega forever. "I volunteer," Daeho said simply. "My ancestor sent the last message before Earth vanished. Let me finish what he started." Others stepped forward immediately. Scientist Ji-hyun, who had worked on the displacement engine, pilot Kyung-soo, who had the skills to navigate the impossible journey into Entity Omega's heart, engineers, doctors, warriors. Within an hour, 1,000 crew members from 20 different species had volunteered for a mission with no survivors. Daeho's grandmother, Nari, now over 1,000 years old thanks to human life extension technology, appeared via hologram. She was the daughter mentioned in that last transmission so long ago. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was steady. "Finish it," she told her grandson. "Bring us all home." The volunteer fleet launched 6 hours later. 1,000 ships containing 10,000 beings who knew they would never see their families again. They flew straight into Entity Omega's central mass, weapons blazing to clear a path. The resonance network amplified across the galaxy. Every sentient being concentrated their will on one thought: hold the darkness back. Give the volunteers time. Daeho's ship, the Final Dawn, pierced deeper into Entity Omega than anyone had gone before. The darkness tried to drain their power, consume their consciousness, but the resonance network protected them. Billions of minds lending strength to 10,000 heroes. Ji-hyun activated the displacement engine. Reality tore open, a hole between dimensions that began pulling Entity Omega through. The entity thrashed, fighting against the pull, but it was too late. "For everyone who came before," Daeho transmitted. "For everyone who comes after. This is humanity's answer to the darkness." Kyung-soo triggered the final sequence. The displacement engine went critical, creating a pocket dimension that collapsed in on itself, taking Entity Omega and the volunteer fleet with it. The last thing the galaxy heard was singing. The 10,000 volunteers from 20 different species singing together as they faded from normal space. Each in their own language, but somehow the song harmonized perfectly. Then silence. Entity Omega was gone. The darkness that had plagued the galaxy for millions of years, trapped forever in a dimension of its own making. The price was 10,000 heroes who chose others over themselves. The Unity fleet returned to their homes. There were no victory celebrations. Too many had been lost. 3 million Morvians, thousands of other species, and 10,000 volunteers who would never come home. But the galaxy lived. Children would grow up never knowing the fear of Entity Omega. Species would develop and grow without the threat of periodic extinction, all because different civilizations learned to work together. 5 years after the battle, a memorial was built on Earth. It stood in a park overlooking the ocean, a simple wall with 10,000 names carved in every language of the galaxy. At the center was a quote from Daeho's final transmission. Nari visited often, running her ancient fingers over her grandson's name. She was over 1,000 years old now, one of the oldest living humans. Sometimes young people, human and alien alike, would ask her about the battle. "Were you scared?" a Velcron child asked her once. "Terrified," Nari admitted. "But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared." "Do you think they knew?" a human girl asked. "That they would win?" Nari smiled. "They knew they had to try. That's what heroes do. They don't guarantee victory. They guarantee the fight." The galaxy entered a golden age. Technology advanced rapidly as species shared knowledge freely.